everybody. Don Zoldai here, one of the co-hosts for Your Full Crew.
Hey, and I'm Mike Peel, the other co host. We've got a lot of great articles for you today. We're going to be talking about AI friends. Do they really care about you? We're going to be talking about Helium and Drone Deck working together to create drone mailboxes that are connected to the internet and will be providing internet services. So that'll be interesting. We're going to be talking about what I think is actually a good contender for the HTML of the metaverse. And then finally, we're going to be talking about some really important AAM news that just came out of Congress, and Don's got that one. We've got some great guests to talk about these topics today. First up, we've got Randy Goers. Randy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Randy Goers. I'm the host and the creator of the Drone Radio Show podcast. It's a podcast about drones and the people that use them for business, fun, and research. Been doing it for 7 years. Just finished my 378th interview, and thankfully, with the support of the drone community, I have over 1 million downloads. I'm really honored and excited about that. I'm also a former city planner. I used to be the director of city planning for the City of Tampa, so I've always found a great interest in how drones and the whole operation of drone technology might impact our communities in general. So that's a little bit about me.
All right, thanks, Randy. And then we got Henze Gustave. So Henze, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Henze Gustave. I'm the Chief Metaverse Officer at Drone Cadets. I'm in charge of building out our Metaverse and VR applications to help everyone learn how to fly drones. I'm also a drone pilot myself, so I have experience in the field for about 6 years now, and just kind of growing along with it and bringing new ideas and insight to it, as well as learning. So happy to be here and excited to get things going, talk about this news.
Yeah, and we're certainly happy to have both of you. We're going to rock on right into the news. First up, we've got this article from Randy about AI friends are an advanced version of talking to yourself. So tell us a little bit about this article and why you thought it was worth bringing up.
Yeah, I ran across on Facebook. I kept seeing ads for AI friends about how there are new apps or bots to sort of make your life better. So I started reading articles about that. I was curious as to are they just mimicking what you're saying, sort of like a Siri or a little bit more of a Siri, or is there really something there behind it? And it sort of also brought to mind what's happened at Google recently, where the whole controversy of did their AI become sentient, and is it a thinking or is it actually a live version of AI? But the article that I began reading was a little bit tongue-in-cheek because it has a little bit of references back to HAL and a few of the other movies. And part of its conclusion is that AI friends are basically sort of cheerleaders of yourself, just helping to encourage you to be a better version of yourself. But it got me to thinking, what if you're not the well-adjusted person that we think we are? What if we've had a bad day, or if we've got real negative thought process, or we have real anger issues, and we start talking to the AI? Does the AI encourage us to be better, or does the AI tell us that our sort of myopic view of the world is correct, and encourage us to take on a negative view of it? So the article doesn't really address that. It only talks about the positive things, but I thought I'd bring that up and see what other people thought about AI friends in general. And are they good for us, or do they seem to put impediments in our lives?
So Henze, what are your thoughts on this?
This was a very interesting article overall, just because I'm heavy in the metaverse, and there's a heavy implication of AI involved in that. Personally, I have some of the same questions that you have, Randy, in terms of if it starts to analyze some of our bad days and some of our terrible human behaviors, right? And start where's the threshold, and who's controlling that threshold on hey, is this thought that this person, this friend, the human friend that I have, is this a positive or a negative thought? and should this be added, or should this change my view or my perspective and how I continue to interact with that human friend? I'm speaking from the AI's perspective. So it's always dangerous to walk that fine line. And also, are you creating more of a, I would assume, like a personalized AI, similar to like your personalized internet or search browsing history, things of that nature, as opposed to something that was global and feeding from everyone's negativity or positivity, however you have it. But it just begs the question to like, where's that fine line? Where, because we have conscious to know what's right and wrong. So where's the conscious being implemented on some of these AI technologies? That's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, when I read it, I didn't see it as much different in a way than what's already happening in the background, right? So when you're on Facebook, all of a sudden it starts feeding you ads, it starts feeding you information that really just kind of dovetails with your own like cognitive bias. And I feel like in society that's not a good thing that we've seen lately over the last several years. This kind of polarization where people just they seek out information that reinforces their own ideas. And if that's what this thing is doing, I don't know that that's a great thing. I agree with both of you. I mean, when I read, oh, they never disagree with you, I literally typed in my notes, cognitive bias, because I think, well, look, I think you all know that diversity of thought is very important. And if all you're doing is feeding your head with information that reinforces the thought process you already have without growing them, I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. Now, on the other hand, I could see limited therapeutic purposes, but to Randy and Henze's point, I feel like this AI needs to kind of flip the script a little bit, because I agree. I think there are a lot of people out there that have kind of persistent negative thoughts. And so you don't want a robot spewing back negativity to you. Maybe there's a way this robot, when it hears something negative, can reframe it to try to get you in a positive mindset. And I think that would be a very useful kind of social robotics kind of tool. But again, I think it's really interesting and to see where this goes. And it sounds like this author unplugged from it, right? He checked it out. He learned kind of what it did, and then he was smart enough to say, hey, I checked it out, I'm stepping back. But how many people get sucked into this world and never leave it? I don't know. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think you had a good point there about this is not that different than what we're already seeing. So I would just say it's a different skin on it, right? So you've put an avatar in place of, let's say, a Twitter post, because we know there's AI bots on Twitter. In fact, there's a famous incident where Microsoft let one loose on the world thinking like it would be doing great, and within 24 hours or a very, very short amount of time, it was very racist. Right. And so it was mirroring its environment. Essentially, what happens here is maybe it wasn't even tuned to be seeking those things out. Most likely not, right? But subtle things like neutrality. Neutrality could actually be dangerous, where it's just saying, I'm going to go with the post that gets the most engagement. And the most engagement might actually be a post that most people hate, right? It might be a racist comment from somebody, and most people even disagree with it. But because the only thing it's measuring to determine whether its behavior is good or not is that engagement, now it is mimicking bad behavior. So we kind of see this on YouTube. The search algorithm is very sensitive, I know, because we're using it a lot more, and we're trying to measure our channel growth. And some of the things, if I watch the wrong video to just get an idea of what something is, all of a sudden my feed is filled with garbage. So garbage in, garbage out. I think there is also bigger questions that are posed by this, where maybe this level of interface, that having an avatar that you're talking to is kind of even more engrossing, more enrapturing, and then people will give it more weight to what it's doing because of that kind of skinning on it. So I don't think you could avoid these things. I think it's a natural evolution. I tried to get like a VTuber set up for today just to kind of show how you can put an avatar in place of even me as a person. And those are very popular now. Some of them are their own stars on YouTube and Twitch. So, and also there's, I think for people who don't feel secure in their looks or don't feel secure in who they are, that these tools will actually be great options for them to find a different self online, be a different self online, and be more of their true self. So you combine that with AI though, and it's going to get messy real fast. I think we're going to have to just figure this out. It's not going anywhere. We're going to have to kind of rewrite the rules of the road for human interaction. Because
I would love to hear. I was going to say, Mike, I'd love to hear Randy and Henze's thoughts on this, because I feel like we're already doing that too much in a way, like hiding behind all these different masks. And I don't know that that's healthy for society. Like, we've seen in the last couple of years with COVID, especially with the kids having to stay home, everything is online. Like, it's really hard for them to engage in person. I mean, we would make jokes before COVID, like, oh, you see these kids at the table, like they're just texting each other across the table. But at least they were across the table, and they would eventually look up and talk to each other. When you can hide behind some kind of an AI mask and an avatar, and because you're not happy with yourself, how does that ever improve you? Like, you need to get out and like actually see people and like work on yourself as a person and like with other people. I don't know. I'm going off on this, but I'd love to hear Rainey and Henze's thoughts
Might
before
be
we go to the
generational,
next
Don.
article. Yeah.
Right. Go ahead, Randy.
I agree. I think we got to have more personal interaction to really see how we respond and relate to other individuals. And I've been a big Westworld fan, so seeing how the AI that we're going to be interacting with an AI and giving an AI our personal thoughts. And it's not even, it's a private company, and again, we have the whole data stuff. Who gets that information, and what are they going to do with it? It's a lot different than having an imaginary friend who only that imaginary friend knows what's going on. This friend is going to be taking your information and putting it someplace. So I just think it's you compound the whole challenge of, is it really an interaction if you're just talking to a computer AI? And the second part is, where does that information, what you told in secret, does it really stay in secret? So it's a lot of open words. I wanted to test it out, but then I was thinking, I don't even want to open up the box to find out. So I just kind of put it at arm's length.
Gotcha. So from my standpoint, I look at it a little differently, right? It's already happening. It's inevitable. So let's look at ways to kind of combat some of the negativity behind it. Because at the end of the day, generation after generation, it's like we're taking a step back from one another and going more digital. And just like how you stated, Dawn, before COVID, they were just texting one another, but now they're just getting online and, kind of doing the AI trick, like you stated, with not even showing their real faces when they do talk to one another using one. So what are the ways that we can get everyone kind of back together, but still using some of the tools that they're familiar with? Because do understand, these kids, they grew up with this, right? They started from young with this. We have a different perspective, and my generation is probably the last dying breed where we did go outside and play with our friends. And video games was kind of introduced as, just an alternative, but it was always more fun to go outside and play with your friends. But now it's reverse, right? So at the end of the day, if they are going to enter into this world, it's inevitable. How can we provide them a safer alternative or a safe space to do it in, or get them back out with their friends? I thought the whole Pokemon Go thing was a cool concept, but that obviously led into some other things, right? And also the last point is just more so with the data point. who's controlling all of this,
Yeah.
right? Who's building all of the apps that is controlling everyone's data? At one point right now, we have the ability to kind of unplug a little bit. But if we go full metaverse, right, like the movie, um, you really can unplug. If your work, your play, your activities, your interactions with everyone is happening within this one medium, and you're, taking your data with it. So that's another conversation on the types of apps that are being utilized or built out, and what's being done with the data from there. So it's a lot of questions to be asked, but I think we could have these conversations so we could kind of steer the boat in the right direction.
Yeah, and
Hopefully.
I definitely think they are important conversations because if the majority of your life is online and online is considered public space, you could talk about the private company owning the data, but you know, what if that private company gets hacked, even if they were trying to responsibly hold your data? So I think we're gonna see people push more and more. They they they're voicing it now, but if your entire life is online and you are totally vulnerable and the metaverse or whatever, let's say some virtual aspect of you actually becomes important to real world success, even more so than it is today, you, we're all going to want that security because otherwise we're totally vulnerable to exploitation. And that's kind of like my biggest fear for this stuff. But I think we'll end up talking about some of these nuances a little bit more as we go through
Yeah,
all of the things we're talking about today. So let's roll over to Henze's article.
yeah, I was going to say it's a great segue because, now is your mailbox going to be collecting information about you too? So, Henze, tell us about why you picked this article, what it's all about.
So this article, it kind of merges two emerging technologies or spaces that I'm interested in, which is blockchain and drones. So this partnership between Drone Deck, which is a mailbox, smart mailbox company, I guess you could call them that. They are partnering with Helium just to utilize their network for low broadband broadcast for some of their data to cut some savings, utilize a decentralized network as well, and the Helium network. This Helium network is a bunch of nodes in a network. It can be owned by anyone, and you pretty much carry out information within this network. And so what Drone Deck is doing with the drone delivery boxes or the overall smart mailboxes, it's a cool concept because now the data can be stored in a decentralized network. The user can own its own data by having one of these mailboxes or one of these nodes through the Helium network. They can own that outright. And if they want to sell the data for whatever purposes to different companies, there are different companies and marketplaces that are allowing that to happen so the common man can get a piece of the pie. This also factors in another concept where you can now be notified when your mail and everything is in a mailbox, and it just makes the mail process a lot easier. But you now introduce a monetary component with the introduction of Helium and their blockchain component, where anyone can now earn from their mailbox. And that extends into now with drone delivery expanding, you can actually possibly sell your electricity. So every time that drone has to charge on the box, you get a piece of the pie with providing that accessibility with your mailbox being in that area. So it introduces a lot of new possibilities in the way that we do things, in the way that we connect to one another, in a way, and also in the way that our data is stored with this new blockchain technology and concept of decentralized networks, where everyone owns, in a sense, their telephone pole or their node or their data center. And now you can do with it as you please, whether sell it or store it and keep it away. So I brought that up, and it was a great segue from our last conversation.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what are you
definitely.
guys' thoughts?
It's funny, people pick their individual articles, but there always seems to be a underlying theme. But before passing it off to Randy, I just want to provide another example. I don't know if you've heard of this protocol, Henze. It's called Render. So, a toy who provides rendering software for like 3D stuff. They allow you to use your computer to render other people's 3D assets who don't have computers as good as you, and they give you a token in return. So a very, very similar system here with Helium. Now, whether or not the economics actually do pay the person out, it might be worth it to the person for all the other services to balance it, or say, like, even if it's cost negative, I get to own my ISP, right? So if we're talking about privacy, it's an offset, even if it's not a total true negation of the cost that you have to invest in that. And that's what I think is interesting about proof of work systems that have tokens like this that are actually providing real work, right? It's not work towards creating Bitcoin or work towards solving random problems. It's work towards actual work. So I think that's an interesting kind of twist for protocols like Render and Helium in terms of what they're offering societally versus other tokens out there in the market. Not an endorsement, but just an interesting fact of how these are built versus kind of more common protocols, if we're being honest. Most common protocols are either proof of stake or proof of work towards their own work. So, Randy, what do you think about this?
Well, I think it's exciting that that two really innovative technologies are coming together to try to do something or enhance both of their services with the blockchain technology and then drone delivery. And the whole concept of drone decks mailboxes is really pretty exciting in terms of how they plan to sort of impact that might have on the actual built environment. So I think it's really exciting to see those two companies coming together and trying to create an integrated service. My experience is I think it's going to take a lot longer than what any of us ever really think about bringing those together. Just my experience in the whole smart cities initiative. I remember maybe it was 15 years ago where Microsoft contacted the City of Tampa and wanted to unveil a plan, bringing us into the whole Smart Cities initiative. They have a big program at the time, and they were trying to get their foot in the door in local governments. And it just took a long time to try to understand the concept, how things are going to talk to each other, where the data goes, and we're still on a local level still struggling. So I think it's a great first step. It's really interesting to see these something that on the surface didn't look like it had any interface at all. All of a sudden they found some commonality where they both could get some benefit out of it. So I really wish them a lot of luck and moving forward. I think there's quite a bit of challenges though in moving forward, but it's great that they have a good first start.
Yeah, but I guess, I don't know, I guess maybe I'm obtuse. I don't really understand how this is going to work as a practical matter if it's all like, so, we talk about infrastructure, who's paying for that. So if it's the individual landowner that's going to invest in the drone deck mailbox as an example, and then using this, this service from Helium, they own their own ISP. Then how does a company, for example, like Amazon, or even let's just say DroneUp, right, working for Walmart, delivering things, how does that work? In other words, everybody talks about the cost of drone delivery, right? There's been some groups like in North Carolina, for example, who aren't really charging for it. Everybody's like, that's not sustainable. They just want the public to get used to it. But if there's almost like a surcharge, like literally to charge the drone on these decks by individual landowners, then that's just going to increase, I would think, increase the delivery price for everybody, unless, like you said, Henze, it's like offset from, in other words, if Amazon's going to deliver to my drone deck outside my house and they're going to land there and charge, then whatever that delivery charge was going to be, they knock off a couple bucks because I just let them charge. Okay, maybe that works, maybe that doesn't. I just don't know when you have all the individual nodes holistically how as a practical matter it will actually work. And maybe there's I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
Henze you could
there's
explain it to me better.
Yeah, I can. Sorry, I guess my light just cut off on me. But nonetheless, your node does more than just that, right? So, for example, right now, the node in itself is keeping the network going. So you're earning just passively, whether you're receiving a delivery or not. And then also there are plans. Actually, Helium just had a partnership with T-Mobile as well as T-Mobile as well as Dish to provide cellular network as well using those nodes. So you'll be able to earn through that as well. Now, I get what you're saying on just the price analysis or cost analysis on the drone delivery side. It may be very tight, or you're introducing another cost factor that may make it impossible for these companies to come in. But for the end user, in my mind, it makes sense now that my mailbox can be a mailbox, a telephone pole, or a node within a blockchain, all in one. And I can also earn from that, as well as keep my data safe within that if I don't, want to opt into providing that data to these companies that are utilizing it.
Yeah,
That's my
it's
thoughts
like
on
a package deal for for the work you're doing to help support the not only the blockchain network for this particular coin, but you're providing internet service. Uh-oh. And you're also providing basically a mini heliport for drone deliveries, right? And then on top of that, they were saying charging. So if
it.
the benefit on if I'm a drone delivery service provider, or why I would even tap into this system if it's available, is I don't have to pay for the drone's battery that it's going to waste to fly back, right? We could leave them kind of distributed on the network and let our logistics handle which drone is going to be doing pickup and drop off based on where it's been charging. So it actually, in that sense, is a pretty decent decentralized solution, and kind of, if it works, but it's very hard with decentralized stuff to get things to a certain scale. But if it works, it actually does leapfrog over a lot of the issues around planning and coordinating planning that Randy was alluding to. So
Henze had a point, I think.
yeah,
Yeah, there's one more component too. There's one more idea that's being thrown around there, actually tested, and using some of these nodes as a tool to help companies get BVLOS waivers. So because the nodes can transmit data, it's almost like you would always have your closest node would be your closest data point, or your connectivity would be limitless in a city that were full of these nodes overall. So you can actually demonstrate safe practice, safe flight, things of that nature. So it may be beneficial to explore some of these ideas with having a decentralized network, as well as providing some connectivity to more rural areas. Start getting some of these smart nodes out there that utilizes internet to kind of broadcast data as opposed to how we currently have it. So again, we're all new and trying to pioneer this whole thing and figure out what's the best way to help society along. And I just like the fact that the technology in itself is just kind of merging together.
Henze, I never thought about that. These drone decks could also be like safe landing zones if there's an emergency.
Yep.
So that makes a lot of sense. And the BV loss aspect, that's really interesting that you brought that up. So yeah, and we always talk about Rex Alexander. He's the kind of the vertiport, heliport, drone port guy. He keeps talking. What is this, a drone port? Like, in other words, if you invest in this infrastructure, essentially what you're investing in for your city, for your municipality, should there be a tax break, like, right, if you buy a Tesla or an electric vehicle, I
Well,
think
and
there's so
that
many
would
in the
certainly
data,
be
you
a
know,
way to get people to invest in these, right?
yeah,
Exactly.
I think this is a great idea to privatize the
Like
infrastructure.
selling solar
And
back on the grid when
yeah,
that
I
would,
got them on my
right?
roof.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the analogy I came up with as you guys were talking. My brain was
Yeah,
clicking.
on
I was
target.
like, I think it's like having solar panels and selling money back to the grid, you know, and being able to charge your car. You know, so that's pretty awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, awesome.
You turn my thinking on this, Henze.
You got one last point, Randy, or
Yeah, just you know, the current model in the cellular industry is the rooftops have been rented out by the cellular companies for their
yeah,
antennas.
Yeah.
These are annual contracts, and then now the service providers for 5G, they're putting up the smaller antennas throughout local communities. So if Helium is going to be providing the lower band internet service, then I could see that one of their ways to fund it is to pay for the rental of the space or the actual node in the drone deck to be able to advance their network. So that could be one of the ways that they're looking to generate revenue, and also for the owner of the drone deck itself.
Yeah, very cool.
yeah. So there's plenty of avenues for this to kind of evolve into. I think it's a great base idea. At least it actually feels innovative, which most times these things don't, right? So yeah, interesting press release. We're gonna take a quick break just to thank our sponsors. Um, Sponsors make this show possible, as well as everything else on the Full Crew Network, including Full Tilt. So we've got Dragonfly, L-Site, Aiken Gump, who just joined us recently. And I recommend you go see our most popular Full Tilt episode with Jennifer Richter. That is blowing up the charts right now. And then also Promo Drone. And if you haven't heard about Jamar Williams and what he's doing with that, go take a look at that episode of Full Tilt Awesome. Also, because it's really inspiring. Like every episode's inspiring, but just hearing that guy's evolution, very similar to my own, and you know, he's got some great life experiences that he shared too. So we want to thank our sponsors, and we're gonna move on to the next article, which is technically also metaverse related, depending on what your take on metaverse and blockchain is. So this. I thought this was interesting because it's usually technologies that people don't think too much about, or sometimes when people talk about blockchain and metaverse stuff, they get kind of obscured with profit models rather than what I think is one of the most important things for actually tying virtual worlds to, let's say, scarce assets that blockchains are able to provide, and how that's actually necessary to build a metaverse. The other thing is, like, what does that search engine look like? How do people actually find the place they're supposed to be if the internet becomes fully 3D functional in such a way that you'd want to traverse it as a metaverse? So, universal scene description, a technology that's used by Pixar to basically create taxonomies for their 3D models. This can be the base layer of kind of like HTML for the metaverse. So the same way that Google indexes all the HTML on your page to determine whether or not the content of that page is actually what somebody is looking for, this can be the kind of protocol layer for a metaverse where you're saying, hey, I like fast cars. I know there's a Formula One game I could jump into, but what's something that some indie game studio has made, or indie creator has made? Like, give me other things like that. And if they're using universal scene description to actually create their models and put tags on them appropriately, now we have a much better way to kind of navigate you know, what would be a true metaverse online. So that's my take on it. I'm curious what everybody else here thinks about it. Henze, you want to go first?
Yeah, I like the concept because we do have to index the metaverse some way, somehow. I do know that, like, for these type of things, especially in the crypto or blockchain space, Chainlink is usually the one that comes in and try to index everything, create a standard for things of some sort. Now with the metaverse, there would have to be some type of standard that's created. This can be that, and if it's adopted, I think it would be a great way for, just like how you described, for people to just explore the different variety, right? And the reason I say that is because most people think metaverse, they think games, but most other people don't realize that there are photorealistic metaverses as well. Mm-hmm. So just like with your race car concept or example, if someone wanted to find a metaverse about cars, they can see the variety that the space have built out for it.
Yeah, like Jay Leno's car collection. Like he could make a virtual world that would be the equivalent of a website, and now I get to walk through and sit in Jay Leno's cars if he indexes them correctly.
The only thing that stands in the way of this is if it gets adopted by the developers. Maybe there's a AI play here where things automatically get indexed through some of the building softwares that we build on, some of the engines. Maybe there's a different way to kind of index some of these things, but at the end of the day, I think if we start using it, if the builders start using it, maybe it'll catch on. But then you still have to build the front end, right, for the users to be able to go ahead and search through that index. So very interesting concept. I do like where it's going with it because right now it's just all over the place. It's who and just kind of displaying things out there that people are just promoting themselves. This would be a great way.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an old joke in software, like, oh, we have two standards for something, so I'm going to go and create the universal standard that binds them together, and then you just end up having three standards. So, yeah, and I, in my conversations with people who work on blockchain stuff or even blockchain gaming, Solana ecosystem, the biggest thing is like there is no interoperability, so you don't really have a metaverse until you have interoperability. So, Randy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think anything that attempts to try to make understanding the metaverse simpler is a good thing. I feel like I've jumped back into the DOS prompt era of trying to understand how to get around the metaverse and where to go. And it's I try to do my own research, and I've gone into a couple of metaverses only to just get in there and go, where am I at? What am I doing? And what am I looking for? So they find a universal standard or universal language or a way for people to figure out, first of all, what am I looking for and how do I find it? And then how can I experience it? Because as we know, there's nothing worse than having this anticipation of this experience and then getting in there and just finding frustration. So if it makes things easier, I'm for it.
Yeah, I was going to say you can bring your AI friend along with you, I guess, too, right? into the metaverse. Just a joke, just a joke. What I loved about this article, honestly, I'll call it accidental innovation, right? So just a little bit of more backstory for folks that haven't read it yet. This was really Disney, right? They're creating Finding Dory, the movie back in 2016. They were trying to figure out a way to get their artists to collaborate, artists that were flung across the globe to collaborate in building these kind of 3D worlds for the movie. And boom, they created this universal scene description, or USD, which is called now. And now there's these applications for it, like NVIDIA using it for internal apps for simulation AI, including for autonomous vehicles. And so this idea that one concept can be pivoted to be useful in so many other ways. That's what I love about this article on innovation. So there's a question out there that I want to answer. Also, by the way, everybody, looks like Ray Hayden is asking, Dawn, this is going to be on your YouTube channel later, right? I think I need to see the first portion, which I missed. And the answer is yes, yes, yes. This is on the Dawn Zoldi YouTube channel, but also full crew. So make sure you're subscribing. Here we go. We got your little subscribe button. Like it. Hit the bell. You'll get the notifications when we're going live. You'll never miss an episode. So absolutely check that out. Thank you for asking that question. But anyway, I love the Finding Dory or origin story of this article and of this technology. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not this ends up becoming the actual HTML, I mean, it's a great headline, right? But I just think it's a step in actually kind of understanding the need, even from a journalist standpoint, right? So the fact that they're covering it and thinking about that, I think we're starting to understand the need for indexing on virtual worlds. But I also want to tap into what Henze was saying about, like, maybe the solution is not as close to what we've used for the traditional web as one might assume, right? In fact, a lot of AI indexing and tools there are being utilized by Google, and I'm not really that happy with the results these days. But I do think that there's something to, once we turn kind of AI taxonomy applications, like you already see is being done really, really well in 2D world, when you turn that on 3D assets, it actually becomes easier to define what something is, right? Like, what makes a chair? Well, if you could, a chair in 2D is actually a very, very persnickety thing to kind of get a hand on. It's whereas a chair in 3D, it's got 4 legs, it's got a back, you could sit on it. You know, it makes it much easier for it, I think, for an AI to navigate that. And we've seen that actually. I have friends at Unleash Live. They do AI that's integrated with drones, and one of the things that made their technology work was actually having multiple drone cameras looking at the same thing rather than just one. More information is better. So the third dimension adds a whole other field of information for an AI to do kind of this categorization. So I think that's kind of interesting that you brought that up.
And I was going to say, I don't think you meant to do this, but you just had a great segue there with this third dimension because, you know, the Community Air Mobility Initiative, Yolanka Wolf was on this show a couple months ago, and they always talk about the third dimension of travel, you know, being advanced air mobility. I've actually heard it referred to as the fourth dimension. I don't know what the third is then, if it's not this, but great segue here. So just recently, the United States Congress did pass the Advanced Air Mobility Act, I believe. Let me see, I'll get the exact title because I'm a lawyer and I have to be exact here. The Advanced Air Mobility Coordination and Leadership Act, okay, to be exact. And, you know, look, I'm generally speaking a glass half empty kind of gal, if you haven't figured that out from my comments this whole entire show. You know, so I like that there's a law, but you know what it does? It creates a working group and a report that's due like essentially 2.5 years from now. So that's the bottom line up front, everybody. I mean, I think it's a great movement forward to get people energized about advanced air mobility and all the federal agencies in a working group, essentially all the key ones. So I'll walk you through that here in a second. But let's face it, like, Australia already put out their AAM strategy earlier this year, right? Europe has been actually kind of exercising it in use space. And we've now got a working group to talk about it for the next 1.5 years and issue a report. So there you go. So what does this thing say? It says the Undersecretary of Transportation will be a chair of this working group, by the way, the purpose of which is to plan for and coordinate efforts relating to safety, ops, infrastructure, physical security, cybersecurity, and the federal investment necessary for maturation of the AAM ecosystem in the U.S., including passenger carrying aircraft. So the Undersecretary of Transportation will be the chairperson. There's going to be one rep from Department of Trans, FAA, NASA, Commerce, DOD, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Labor, Federal Communications Commission, and others as SecTrans determines. And they're supposed to be engaging with state, local, tribal, territorial governments, the aviation industry, labor stakeholders, other stakeholders on a whole range of things I'm not going to get into. It's a big list, A through L. Do that math in letters. And they can also create advisory committees, right? So here's what they have to do. 1 year to complete a comprehensive review of a whole bunch of things. Then after that, 180 days to come up with an AAM national strategy. And in the meantime, in tandem, if you will, the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, is doing its own study under this law within the next 180 days. So this study will come out before the next, this working group report. And this is interesting because I'm a lawyer. I'm nerding out here. They're supposed to be reviewing the roles of the federal versus state, local, tribal, territorial governments in AAM. What is the state of the law? And that is the key to this. So that'll be interesting because we've been talking about navigation, all kinds of things. We were just talking about drone deck and private property ownership of infrastructure. How is all this going to play? Big issues to be grappling with, but that's what this is all about. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Randy, because I know you follow this as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's on one level, it's exciting to see that there's a big movement forward. It's just a lot of it's like some big bites of the big issues and trying to get it all figured out within their 18-month time frame. I mean, I'm a city planner, and the whole idea of mass transit and trying to move people through and what you have to actually go through to put together a local application for a mass transit system, and the cost of that system is just an arduous process. So the rules that set that up have taken years to evolve. So you got to start somewhere. So they're going to do that to try to figure out exactly what is the actual way to make AAM work, and who are all the players and how it gets affected. But at the end of the day, it's all going to be about how many people can get transported, what does it cost per person, and how much of it's going to be borne by the federal government and how much is going to get borne by the user. So those are some big financial equations that'll have to be worked out. But I'm excited to see it get started.
Randy, and I'm going to go to Henze next. You raise a great point. Or agencies that are not on this list, when you think about multimodal transportation, right, it needs to be complementing existing transportation systems. As a city planner, I think you would agree. So where's the National Highway Transportation Safety Agency on this list? Where's I don't know, DHS does, they do work with the ports, but it seems to me there's a lot of traditional non-aviation focused transportation groups that need to absolutely be included in this. I know DOT, right? They can, hopefully they'll put NHTSA into this mix because they do get a rep. But it seems to me that is key. What do you think, Henze?
So overall, I like the concept of this. I like what they're doing and kind of bringing this to the forefront because we need this legislation to match up with the innovation that some of these companies are, coming to the forefront with. The thing I don't like is that it's not a long enough time, in my opinion, in this little 18 months, which I'm pretty sure they can amend and probably will and push back because there's a lot of moving parts to this whole thing. Randy brought a great point with just city planning alone, with moving people. Kind of that in itself, building it out is a huge logistic type of just huge logistically. To figure out, to plan out, and involve all the right agencies who move at their own pace, mind you, to come on board and get the plan out right, and then finding the funding and everything to get it done. 18 months just seems a little rich just to come up with the plan behind it. And then also you start to think about the integration with the current transportation system. A lot of that is still archaic in itself, right? So we're trying to me, it almost seems like we have to end one and move into the other, but we know that's kind of hard to do. So where's that integration point? Where's that fine line between the two? We can keep all of the systems kind of moving forward in the same path, and also to have the stakeholders not lose money on this new innovative thing and have no one use it, or we don't have the infrastructure to actually bring it out en masse like how we're thinking. Because if I'm thinking about my local grandmother or aunt that's walking to the bus to catch a bus right now, how often can those blue collar folks actually access a flying vehicle means or have the means to pay for something like that. So you start to think about like just the financial part of it. Like, can the stakeholders even make money from it? Do we have to have an extra tax to pay for all of the infrastructure that's needed for all of this? And I think those are a lot of questions that's going to be raised in some of these meetings, and we're just going to be chasing the tail for a while until someone kind of breaks it and say, hey, we can do X, Y, Z, or roll it out in a slow plan.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I'd like to get your thoughts too,
Right, right.
because Yolanka Wolf was on here talking about how for the first time, right, there was an
Yeah.
overarching transportation plan. They included advanced air mobility
And
for
well,
the
and they
first
also
time.
considered equity in that plan.
I
So
get it. So
so
Henze's
what?
point.
Yeah. So to Henze's point, thinking about equity, that they're going to have to consider that as part of that other mandate uh, when they actually get in the meeting rooms and try to iron this out. Um, and they might be up against an economic reality on that. That actually, to get this started, we have to be flying only rich people at first. And I don't think anybody's really going to be happy with that one. The other thing, let's couch that for a second. The other thing that I think is kind of interesting here is like America is almost held back by our size on this because we do have so many more stakeholders to have to federate this plan, where you're almost like you're better off being Australia, where most of the land is not inhabited, right? You have a few cities and regions to coordinate. It's still a great effort, I'm sure, but if we're looking at timelines for why they got it done faster, I would assume that might be a huge factor. We also have one of the most complicated airspaces, and flat out, we do drag our feet here. I mean, when we look at the innovation that I saw in the drone industry when I first got started, and I've been told by people that everything that I saw at that point had already been around for 5 years, and then it took at least 7 years for the FAA to actually understand it, because even the people that were interested don't have the time, and the effort was initially understaffed. And also, nobody at the FAA ever got promoted by putting more birds in the sky. All those factors have kind of contributed to what seems like a glacial pace. But here's the thing, like, we're so big that once you actually do settle on a way to implement this and the technology is developed, it's going to be a huge home run. The only thing that I think is the biggest kind of risk factor for any company entering this space is, not that I'm an expert, but I might recommend starting in another country, flat out, just because most investors aren't going to give you money for more than 5 years. Some of these bigger companies are smart enough, like Bell, for example. That's just the first one that comes to mind. But they have a history. But if you're a startup and you want to try to get into this space, you need to probably establish elsewhere, because your ramp isn't going to be long enough. 10 years, 12 years. There's no dumb money that will give that to you, that long a timeline. It's just too risky. And but if you're able to get things started, and one of the best examples is Zipline, right, with their delivery system. And Matternet, right? They recently just got the type certification. So, yeah, that's kind of my hot drone industry tip for the week based on this news. If you're getting into AAM, start elsewhere.
Yeah, I did want to make one, since this is a newscast, one additional announcement. I saw this on LinkedIn the other day. I think it was General Poss, actually, one of our first Tilt guests, that posted this. This Wednesday, September 28th at 14:15 Eastern, the U.S. Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation is holding a hearing. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be the Commercial Drone Alliance, Lisa Ellman, and the Assure UAS chief, Steve Luxian, are going to be testifying about how the FAA can integrate drones and advanced air mobility quicker. So it's kind of a lead up to next year's FAA Reauthorization Act. So people are just starting to testify about that now. So check that out, because I mean, no better people to hear from than Lisa on this, and presumably Steve, who's been doing a ton of research down there at Assure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got some other great stuff coming up this week, right, Dawn? And next week.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you
We
want you want
sure,
to walk us through what's coming up?
yeah, you sure can. So tomorrow, I'm actually speaking of mobility. I'm actually headed today on a plane to not an advanced air mobility plane, but a normal commercial plane to Austin, Texas, for the Move America conference there. And so tomorrow morning, I'll be live there with Sharon Rossmark, Women in Drones, and we'll be dialing in Andreas Ployer from Austria, Drone Rescue Systems. They're both going to be on our Twitter Spaces, 9 a.m. Mountain, which is 10 a.m. Central, so please join us for that. And then Wednesday, on the Dawn of Drones, we have Gabriel Bendheim of Defend Solutions as we really close out an incredible month dedicated to market use cases. So check us out. All these are at 9 a.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Eastern, by the way. Except for Thursday, we have our Clubhouse, which is Drone Law Connections. We're going to kick off our new month theme of industry enablers with Don Bershoff from True Weather. So check that out. And then next week, we've got some amazing guests on the crew, more amazing guests. We always have amazing guests. Pat Houston, Brigadier General, United States Army, retired, AI expert, is going to be on the crew, along with Tim Tenney from Nordic Unmanned Systems. And then on Tuesday, we're going to do a very special broadcast instead of our normal full tilt. We're doing something live from the UAS Summit and Expo with 3 separate guests on there. So we'll be advertising that here shortly. So check that out. Absolutely. So thanks, Mike, for that.
Yeah, I want to thank our guests for bringing up these great articles. Awesome discussion as always. We'll be happy to have you back. I also want to thank the audience for watching today. And if you have any comments, please shoot them in now. We will see them after the show. And yeah, you can connect with us at the Full Crew IO. And then also just remember to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. The channel has grown, actually, I think as of this morning, 136% over last month. So that is all thanks to you out there. We appreciate the support, and we hope it continues. We got a clap or a wave from Chris Wedgeworth. Nice to see you, Chris. And that's really it for today's episode. Thank you again, everybody. We are out here.